My name is Cherry Fisher May. Along with my husband Steve, we publish The Independent, A-Biz. We produce events like this with this amazing staff of very few people who work very hard and love what they do. And it's great to share that experience with them each and every day at our office in 551 Jefferson Street. We'll begin, as we do, with an invocation and a few announcements and words from one of our sponsors. But I would like to begin today with the pledge and with an invocation. And doing the honors for us today is Pastor Ken Lazard of the Destiny of Faith Church. So I'd like to invite Pastor Lazard up here to offer the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would stand as you are able.
Good evening, everyone. Heavenly Father, we are here today, gathered in your presence, Lord, to celebrate the wonderful accomplishments, Lord, with the architectures and the design and the creative concepts you've given each and every one of them. We thank you for this awesome day, this awesome time that you've given us. We ask that your presence would be here and that each speaker today would speak from their heart and from the things that you have put inside of them. We thank you, Lord, that you are bringing us into a very innovative period. And we thank you for the innovators, Father God, that's here right now. So, Father God, we ask you to bless this time together, bless this people, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A few announcements. Please begin eating. But as I said, this is not the biggest event that we produce every year, but it's certainly one of the most important, because what the architects and planners and interior designers do in our community, and landscape architects, is create a space for us to live in. And there is perhaps no other group other than perhaps those who are responsible for defining the public spaces in our community, who are going to impact this community for generations to come. And so it is in deference to those talents and that commitment that I welcome you here today to help us share in honoring what they do for our community. I want to thank our sponsors for continuing to invest in this message. Our legacy sponsor is Van Eaton and Romero for this particular event. So would the VER folks please stand so that we can say thank you so much for your continued support. I'm not sure exactly where they are in the room, but Gail right there and Nancy. Thank y'all so much. They have been supporting this event since the very, very first year, and they had a stellar year this year, so congratulations again on that. Paul Michael is a returning sponsor again this year, and I'd like to ask the Paul Michael folks to stand and be recognized. And they have a gift certificate for each of our winners today, so thanks so much for your continued support and your great store over in River Ranch. But of course, none of this would be possible without our sponsor of the entire series, which of course is the Independent Lecture Series. And so on behalf of Iberia Bank, I've asked Jerry Vascacu to come up and say a few words. So please, a round of applause for Jerry Vascacu.
Thank you, Jerry. And thanks to the other sponsors, Gail and Nancy and Paul Michael, great group. We're really happy to be here. We at Iberia Bank, we love this event. We love it every year. It's one that I think really delivers, as Cherry and Steve have a real history of doing great things for us in the community. We consider this one of the most fun and energizing events of the year. It's one reason we stay with it, and we stay with the lecture series. It's really, I think the lecture series as a whole is one that's had great impact on Lafayette and Acadiana. You know, I was thinking about it before the luncheon today. You know, it feels great and fun, but it also feels right to celebrate the shining stars of design in Acadiana every year. So thanks for doing that and keeping that so high on your radar. As presenting sponsors of the lecture series and today's event, we look forward to recognizing the folks who make Acadiana the best place to live, work, and play. It's a theme you hear a lot. I've been here about 5 years now, and that theme is repetitive and it is accurate. It is the best place to live, work, and play, and I'm real thankful to be here myself. To the honorees today, congratulations. To all of you deserve it. Thanks for your efforts of the past and all of your efforts well into the future. You do have a great impact on our great city and our great region. To Steve and Cherry and all of your great staff, thanks for your continued leadership. Again, thinking about that this morning. Thanks for your continued leadership in Lafayette and all of Acadiana, your ongoing commitment to celebrating the brightness of Lafayette that opens, and you open eyes daily about the brightness. And those that are around me and stay close to me regularly, brightness is something that I have great value in, and I really I see that in all that you do, and it means a lot to us at Iberia Bank, and we thank you for that, for celebrating such brightness. Ultimately, thanks for your passion and your commitment to our city. Let's see, and thanks to all of you today. Thanks for being here for this great event. I think you're going to enjoy it. Thanks for the music that kicked us off. What a great touch. I heard that was coming, and that was wonderful. We could have listened to them. Maybe you'll make them come back. We'll close them out. There you go. But you're in for a treat. Enjoy your lunch. Enjoy the program. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. On that note, the Lafayette Historic Preservation Festival is coming up, and that's another event that we like to support that's in the spirit of today's event. The Festival and History Walk is scheduled for Saturday, May 9th. That's the day before Mother's Day. There are walking tours. There's a walk-free trolley ride if you want to pay a few extra bucks. Food, libations, and music. So there's flyers at the table, registration table on your way out. Our next scheduled event is the annual State of the Economy Luncheon, presented by LIDA CEO Greg Gautreaux on Thursday, June 18th, here at the Convention Center. Tickets will be on sale soon. And I also want to thank chefs Pat Mold and Gilbert Descoux for collaborating on today's menu. More on that later. And also, we will be bringing back later Wilson Savoy and Drew Simon. Wilson's on fiddle. He is a 4-time Grammy nominee, 1-time winner. Drew has also been nominated 4 times. So they'll be playing off and on throughout lunch. So please, a round of applause for Wilson and Drew. We'll serve lunch shortly, and as soon as everyone is served, we'll begin the awards, followed by our keynote speak. So bon appétit. And I'll give Anthony a second to change the video, and we're going to move into the awards ceremony first, and then I'll bring up Nathan Norris from Downtown Development Authority to introduce our keynote speaker. This is the 11th annual INDesign Awards Luncheon, created by the Independent to recognize excellence in architecture, interior design, landscape architecture, historic preservation, and urban planning in Lafayette and throughout the one Acadiana region. It's also our way of emphasizing that the fundamental concept that good design contributes overall to the quality of life in our community. This is a juried competition. Our judges this year were Eddie Caziu, retired professor of architecture at UL, who was recently honored with the Spark Award from UL's College of the Art for his outstanding career and lifetime achievements. And Beth Miller helped us again this year in the Interior Design Division. Beth is the Associate Dean at Mississippi State University and Educator Medalist for the American Society of Interior Designers. We thank them both for their time. Beth is not here, but Eddie is. Eddie, would you stand and be recognized, and again for your lifetime award and for your work with us today. And it was a wonderful, wonderful party on your behalf. We enjoyed being there, Eddie. Last year, a special INDesign Innovation Award was presented to Lafayette Consolidated Government for the Comprehensive Plan, a parish-wide 20-year blueprint for the growth and development of our community. It's worth noting that the Unified Development Code, or UDC, which is the backbone of this plan, was recently approved unanimously by the Parish Planning Commission and will be presented as an introductory ordinance on Tuesday, and then we expect it to move forward for final adoption on May 5th. But we don't want to take anything for granted, so it's important for our councilmen to hear from us that we support this. So if you have a second to reach out to them by email or phone or go to one of the meetings, please do. It's a major goal. It was a major goal for us when we started the INDesign Awards to move towards something like this that was a comprehensive community plan. So we want to thanks to Joey Durrell for his leadership and his team. They've done an amazing job, and it's long overdue. For those of us who feel passionately about this, One Acadiana has an important announcement to make today that will add strength to our voices. One Acadiana has hired one of the nation's top urban development professionals to spearhead an urban revitalization initiative to transform the core of Acadiana. His name is Harry Weiss. He's currently the executive director of the Downtown Development Authority and Business Improvement District in Grand Junction, Colorado. And he's going to serve as vice president of urban revitalization and development for One Acadiana, the first person in this role. He has an impressive resume. There was a committee including Flo Meadows, Nathan Norris, Kevin Blanchard, and Pat Trahan, and Carrie Templeton, who all worked with One Acadiana on the search process and selection process. So you'll be able to read more about Harry. He'll be here in June. We'll have a full story on the Insider today. And if you're not currently an insider, just drop your business card on the way out, and you'll be in line for breaking news from us every day. Now on to the awards. We had record participation this year. 20 awards will be presented today, and we'll briefly review the winning projects, moving from bronze to silver to gold. At the end of each segment, we'll invite the winners to stand and be recognized, and then ask them to make their way up first for a group shot on the awards podium. And then Jerry Prejean from Iberia Bank will help us give out the awards, moving from segment to segment. So please hold your applause till the end of each segment, and I'll explain your role again when we get to that point. First, a bronze medallion in commercial interior design goes to Interior Design Solutions for AMG Specialty Hospital. With 16 locations in 6 states, AMG is headquartered here in Acadiana, and this project was designed to be the company's flagship location. A bronze also in commercial architecture and design goes to Don O'Rourke and Associates for the City of Kaplan Courthouse. This renovation of a 1950s schoolhouse pays homage to the modernist style inherent in the original building and gave new purpose to a potentially blighted property in downtown Kaplan. In the residential category, a bronze goes to Callie Sayre Design for the Domingue residence located in River Ranch. This custom home was inspired by a small beach cottage and features a palette of muted colors, taking maximum advantage of the abundant natural light. A bronze medallion in architecture and design goes also to Abel Crozier and Davis for the Hilliard residence, nestled among the live oak trees along Bayou Teche. This distinctly Louisiana-style home incorporates timbers from an abandoned barn once located on the site. And a bronze also goes to Eco Lafayette for Enclave Phase 1, an emerging pedestrian-friendly development on Pinhook Road that will eventually be comprised of 90 townhomes, several live, work, and commercial mixed-use buildings. And finally, a bronze medallion goes to Saft Architecture for Dupuis Farm, an ultra-energy efficient modern farmstead located on 7 acres near Maurice. The monthly energy cost for this well-designed 2,200 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath home is only an amazingly $60 a month. So I'll ask the award winners to please stand as I call their names before they make their way to the award stage. Please hold your name hold your applause until everyone is standing. Marie Lukaseski of Interior Design Solutions will accept. Brent Frick of Don O'Rourke and Associates, please stand. Interior designer Callie Sayre, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Callie, is that right? Architect Eric Crozier, Eco Lafayette's Stephen Artigo, and architect Corey Saft. Would the bronze winners please make their way to the stage? And we're going to take a quick group photo just this way. And while they're taking the photo, I would like to mention that we can only show a few of the amazing photographs of these projects today, but they are available. There's a comprehensive gallery online that Doug Ashey Building Materials has sponsored. The traffic there has been really, really strong. So all of the winners today, bronze, silver, and gold, have their own gallery online at theend.com. So I really encourage you to go to our website and take a moment to do a virtual tour of all of these projects, because there's some amazing inspiration there, and it's a great way to learn more about what's going on in our very own community. The judges awarded silver INDesign awards to 9 honorees today. In the commercial category, Payco & Company wins silver for the Arion building, a mixed-use office industrial building in Broussard that was designed to set the company apart from other energy service providers and reflect the progressive, contemporary image of its owner. Silver also goes to architect Paul J. Allen for renovations to the Bank of Abbeville. First built in the town's historic Magdalen Square, the renovated design introduced 21st century elegance and renewed a spirited vitality into the once tired spaces while embracing the historic character of the building. Architect Mark Lalonde earned silver for improvements and additions to the kitchen area in Lafayette's Oil Center. The centerpiece of this project is a demonstration kitchen that seats 24 on a radiused island that has allowed the owners to add a daily lunch program because of customer response to the new space and the new menu. And if you haven't been in to see that, it is really, really inspired. A great new addition in the Oil Center. And silver also for interior design also goes to Abel, Crozier, and Davis for the right angle office in downtown Lafayette. Designed as a professional, energetic space that utilizes interior windows to help transmit natural light throughout, and it combines contemporary colors with many original features and finishes to round out the composition. Moving now to residential, a silver goes to Charles Seal Design for the lofts, located off South College in Lafayette, to create a space that is livable, yet sophisticated enough for entertaining. Seal redefined the developer's original space plan and also presided over the selection of the furniture, fixtures, and finishes. Architect Mark Lalonde wins silver for the Scheffler Bay House at Sycamore Point, designed to take advantage of dramatic views of Vermilion Bay while withstanding the strength to survive the elements of South Louisiana coastal living. Simple elegance aloft at 20 feet over the sea. The Fontenot Camp, also at Sycamore Point, garners a silver for Edson Davis Design, whose client looked southeast across the Gulf to the Florida Keys for inspiration on this project. The camp's simple form, bright colors, and galvanized roof would make Jimmy Buffett himself feel very welcome right here on the Cajun Riviera. Argent also receives the silver in the residential category for a renovation on Elephant Walk and a new construction project, as well as the renovations there. It was immersed in a rural landscape, but utilized contemporary architectural style. The design also maximizes the use of natural light to create more open, usable space for the family who lives there. And finally, a silver medal goes to Angel Architects for the studios at Lafayette Wholesale Grocery. The renovation of a 1926 commercial warehouse in downtown Lafayette, and now is a 15-unit live-work studio apartment for artists. The goal was to touch the building lightly so that the historic brick and wood structure would be the star of the show. Accepting silver awards today, and would you please stand, interior designer Charles Seal, architects Mark Lalonde, Ashley Lachelet, Glenn Angel. Accepting for Payco and Company is Joe Dupree, Paul Alain, Mark Lalonde, Eric Crozier, and designer Edson Davis. Please, a round of applause for our silver medalists today. And please make your way to the awards podium for a group photo and to receive your awards. And moving now to our final category, the gold. Abel, Crozier, and Davis architects will take home 2 gold medallions today for commercial architecture, including one for the inspired renovation of the East Main Street office space in downtown Lafayette. It's just around the corner from our offices. It now houses their firm. It was their first endeavor in business, where the group served as owner, developer, architect, and contractor. Their second gold medal is for General Electric Oil and Gas, a design-build project that expanded and updated the company's existing repair facility in Broussard. The new facade improves the scale and image for GE along Highway 90. Chase Marshall Architects wins gold for the innovative renovation of an existing industrial office space into the sales and corporate offices of Sound and Communication Systems. The goal here was to demonstrate an image of forward momentum for the company while creating a distinct identity that was also sensitive to the transitional industrial neighborhood where the office is located. WHLC Architecture wins gold for the expansion of the Lafayette General Medical Center Emergency and Surgery Departments. This mammoth project encompassed an addition to the hospital, a renovation of the hospital, and an added parking garage with a new surgery department designed for maximum flexibility. And interior designer Charles Seal wins gold for 4 Southern Girls in Eunice, a multimedia shopping mecca offering upscale attire for moms, infants, children, tweens, and pampered pets. The design plays on 2- and 3-dimensional space to create a customized shopping experience. And Charles was telling me earlier that the screen in the front window has rear projection on it that the owners can use to do in-store promotions, promote their merchandise, but it's also across the street from the busiest restaurant in unison, and so it lures shoppers in. It's very, very ingenious. So please go to the website and see more about that. In the residential category, the A-Bear residence in River Ranch wins 2 gold medallions, one for Gomez Design Group and a second for Casey Webb Designs. The goal was to incorporate California modern style without compromising the warmth and coziness of a traditional home. The result? A clean, minimal look with an open floor plan that allows the patio to be part of the living space. The color palette includes warm gray tones with bright pops of color, contrasting textured materials, and a few whimsical fixtures for good measure. The Building Institute wins gold for the Coor House. This is the 3rd market-rate sustainable home in the UL Lafayette Building Institute's neighborhood infill project. The name comes from the centralized courtyard, the heart of the home, that connects the living room and the kitchen to the great outdoors. Donald J. Breaux wins gold for the Angel residence, a home designed to reflect a Louisiana house of the early 1800s, using a magnificent moss-draped live oak tree as its defining element. Recycled Louisiana-influenced materials were used, and traditional deep porches, front and back, provide shade from the summer sun. Jeffrey Carbo Landscape Architects wins gold for landscape renovations and improvements to a mid-century river house here in Lafayette. The installation combined bold, linear patterns with rows and grids of trees for a unique landscape that complements the architecture. A new outdoor living area was also added. Paul Alain wins gold for the Tensaw Tower. This is perhaps the most unique entry this year and the latest addition in an adaptive reuse effort on the banks of the Bayou Teche in New Iberia. The name comes from the Civil War shipwreck, the USS Tensaw, that was found during construction of this amazingly creative home. Accepting gold medallions today are architects Eric Crozier of Abel Crozier Davis, Jay Chase of Chase Marshall, Rick Limscomb of WHLC Architecture, Jeff Jertson of the Building Institute, Paul Alain and Donald Breaux, landscape architect Jeffrey Carbo, designer Les Gomez, and interior designers Charles Seal and Casey Webb. Please stand. And come forward for your group gold photo, if you would, to the winner's stage. As the gold winners pick up their awards, I do want to say thanks to our staff, once again to the judges, and also to the architects, interior designers themselves. This is a very, very challenging process. For them to enter the awards, it takes a lot of preparation, nice photography, filling out some paperwork, and then for us as a small staff to pull together this event and also the reporting that we do on them is really a labor of love, and we're happy to do it, but we appreciate all the hard work that goes into it. And now, to introduce you to today's keynote speaker, please welcome the CEO of the Downtown Development Authority in Lafayette, our own Nathan Norris.
It's a great honor to introduce a longtime friend of mine and someone who I've learned so much from, who's Steve Mouzon. Steve Mouzon, for those who don't know, is an exceptional bundle of energy. He is always on the cutting edge of where things are headed in the design community, so it's really fun to be able to bring him here to Lafayette to talk about some different ideas. I did want to mention just a couple of things. First of all, instead of having a long introduction, I just want to introduce you to some of his books. If you're designing a traditional home, you should probably check out Traditional Construction Details or Patterns, because that's been a bestseller on Amazon for many, many years. But what I'm really intrigued by was his second book that he did, which is one that I would hope that at some point in the future we could do for our region. And that's essentially a local architecture book. And he did it for the country of the Bahamas. And if you haven't seen this book before, it's called A Living Tradition, and I encourage you to check it out. And then finally, he's got a book that he wrote that's actually gained a lot more traction, which was The Original Green, which is talking about how to be sustainable using those principles that our forefathers used over 100 years ago when energy was very expensive and they didn't have the luxury of wasting their resources as much as we do today. He's on to other books now, but I just wanted to mention that. The final thing I wanted to say is I do want to thank the Independent and specifically Iberia Bank for allowing this to continue. To us, who are responsible for revitalizing the core of our region, this is a very important forum to hear from great speakers from across the country to come visit us. So without further ado, Steve Mouzon.
You know what, I may just use this if you want to flip back to it. Can you all, oh, okay, great. One thing I ought to note real quick before we get started, obviously you can tell already I'm not from here, okay, from the way I'm talking. But I will say I think we're all probably from roughly the same place a long time ago. My ancestors were, they were on the wrong side of the Huguenot Rebellion and got kicked out of France in 1718, came to South Carolina, and that's where my dad grew up. So I moved to Alabama. Well, my dad moved to Alabama. I was born there. And, actually a couple of years before I was born. So anyhow, we if you go back far enough, we're all from about the same place. But anyhow, real quickly, if you have your phones, if you'd pull them out and cut them on, and then if you're on Twitter, the hashtag is GoUrban, and I'm at Steve Mouzon if you wanted to say anything about what we're going to talk about. How we compete for talent today and how we keep the talent is a whole lot different than it has been in years past. What we need to look at is what are the strengths of this town and this region, and how do you help those to increase, and also what are the weaknesses and what can we do to remedy those. The old economic drivers, if you look at why people settled in a place or why the place thrived in particular, it's things like natural resources. Is there iron ore to dig out of the ground or stone of some sort or whatever? Is it near a river? Is it on the ocean? Is it at some major intersection or something like that? And for a very long time, that's why cities were located where they were and why they thrived. Now, however, it's a whole different thing for most places because today the new economic driver is something that I call the cool factor. In other words, if your place is cool enough that you can attract people, that's really the key, as opposed to just simply being on a river or something like that. So it's a very different time when you look at what do we need to be doing to actually move things forward. Let's talk about the strengths. What is the greatest strength of this region? Everybody tells me that if you're talking about either here in Lafayette or in Acadiana in general, that the greatest strength here is your culture. Okay, I've heard that time and time and time again, and so it's both has to do with food, and also has to do with the music of the area. Matter of fact, I understand that Nathan has told me. He said, if we get a band in here, and they're not playing the local music, he said, I get all kinds of people calling up and complaining, and they're saying, well, what are you bringing in these imports for? I also understand that you've had, well, I probably shouldn't name them, but anyhow, you've had a national chain seafood restaurant that has come in here and could not make it. You don't want the ordinary stuff from somewhere else. You don't want the national brand. You want your own. Okay, and so it's a very important thing to understand. Now, so what's the greatest weakness? Well, the greatest weakness is the fact that your built environment simply does not respect your culture. As a matter of fact, if you look at this, this is here in town, but it could be anywhere in the U.S. because there's scenes like this all over the country, and this has absolutely nothing to do with the culture of here. Okay, that could be Boise, Idaho, for that matter. Now, if you talk about the built environment, if you look at the rural and the suburban architecture, then what you'll find is that actually the patterns that are developed there, the languages of architecture that are developed over the centuries, are actually pretty well tuned to the regional conditions and climate and culture. Okay, and so that's not so much the problem. The real problem, in my opinion, is the fact that the urban architecture is really, again, this could be anywhere. This didn't have to be here in town. It could have been, I could name 100 towns and it wouldn't matter because it could be in any one of them. It's what you call, to be generous, these are examples of what you'd call American mercantile architecture, but it really is kind of anywhere in the U.S. architecture is what it amounts to. So, on the other hand, there are some places in the world and in the U.S. that fall into the category of what I call the most loved places. Okay, these are places that we have loved the longest and where we also value the highest. Let me be really clear. What we're talking about here is the creation of value. It's not just a discussion on what might be more attractive or whatever. It's actually about the creation of value, and actually it can be great value according to what you do. And one characteristic of these most loved places, wherever you go, what you'll find is that it's clear where you are. In other words, it's not an anywhere USA or anywhere in the world type of place. It's a very clear place. For example, if you look at, I'm going to give you 4 examples here. If you look at this little town, you'll say, well, that's got to be a little English village. And some people will say, well, it is probably in the Cotswolds. And some of them would even ask, is it Borton-on-the-Water? And of course it is. If you look at this image, there's nobody that's been an American citizen for more than about 6 months that can't, out of the entire surface of the earth, narrow down to exactly 1 square mile of precisely where that is. No shadow of a doubt. Okay? No doubt whatsoever. This one also, which is where I'm from now, moved to Miami Beach about 12 years ago. No doubt about where that is. People will look at this one and they say, well, that's got to be a little Italian hill town, probably in Tuscany. And some will say, is that Pienza? And of course it is. And so 2 things you'll notice when you look at all of these images here. And that is that, number one, there is a great variety, okay? But it's all within a narrow range. Okay, there's no 2 buildings that are alike in any of these images. Okay, they're all, every building is different, but it's within a narrow range. And what this does, this characteristic, the great variety in the narrow range, I would maintain to you, is really the threshold of a great place in terms of the built environment. Now the problem is we can actually say, well, let's have a very narrow range and just say, let's just do this, and you have a typical style-based pattern book will just say, do these details and that's it. And of course, architects are saying, well, you're handcuffing me, and sure enough, you are. So that doesn't work well. But we can also say, well, let's just have the great variety and let it be a free-for-all. But that doesn't create the character that makes a place identifiable. Okay, so it's doing the 2 of them together, the great variety in the narrow range, that really gets over that threshold of being a great place, and it's what we should all aspire to as we build. This is done by talking about a language of patterns. When I'm talking about a pattern, I mean things that occur over and over again. It's like, how do you build an eave? How do you build a door? How do you make a sunny garden spot at the edge of a building or something like that? And so these patterns all ought to be ones that are respective of the regional conditions and climate and culture. Okay. And when we talk about these, what do I mean by that? Well, one thing that the patterns need to do is we're trying to create a great place, is they need to pay attention to how the various parts of the urbanism and of the building should function. In other words, if you're on a shopping street, then at eye level, you need to have most of the space on a wall to be open. You need about 60% open to really have a great street where people can be looking into the storefronts, so you don't bore people. If you have too many blank walls, people get bored and they don't walk there and they don't shop there and the businesses suffer. Okay, so this has real world economic implications. It's not just about making a pretty street. Above, when you get to the second floor and above, then you have a different set of conditions because people are living there maybe, and so they don't necessarily want a wall of glass necessarily. And so the two parts of that function very differently. If you're looking at the climate, in this part of the world, obviously, with a fair amount of rain, you want to have galleries where people can walk on the sidewalk actually under cover, where they don't just get totally flooded out if a big rain comes. And of course, with the culture, this is a place where people are more engaging, they're friendlier, they're warmer than in a lot of parts of the world that I go to. And so you need to have an architecture that is allowing that interaction to occur between, people moving from inside to outside and the spaces in between, like this woman that's occupying a space in between. Actually, I got to tell you the story. This was actually down in Cuba. Okay, I was down there and I was taking pictures, and she smiled at me, and I took her picture, and she gave me a thumbs up, so I guess it's okay to use the image. I have no idea who she was, but anyhow, just some stranger on a balcony. So, but let's talk about these patterns a little bit more. The problem is style is a very poor thing to talk about when you're talking about how do we create a great place, because style is almost like religion. It's complicated enough that nobody will ever change their mind about style. It just ends up being a battle, if you do that. But if we talk about patterns, the individual pattern of what makes sense, in a certain region, we can talk about better ways of building an eave here, or worse ways, or better ways of doing a whole number of different things that will actually accomplish specific things, and leave the whole question of style off the table. That really shouldn't even be something that it makes for a much more intelligent discourse if we're talking about patterns instead of style. Okay, now let me talk a little bit more about these patterns. There are 6 realms of patterns. The first realm are the personal patterns that occur within the work of one architect or designer. In this particular case, obviously anybody that knows architecture knows that that's got to be a Frank Gehry building, and sure enough it is. Now, the problem with first realm patterns is until they spread beyond the work of one architect, they cannot strictly be said to be a living thing. In other words, when the designer dies or the architect dies, they die with them because nobody else is doing that. But just as soon as it spreads to other people in that locality, then the pattern graduates to the second realm and actually takes on a life of its own. The person who came up with the idea can die, and the idea carries on. For example, these are what the rest of the country calls the Charleston side yard. In Charleston, they call it the single house. I have no idea who came up with the idea of arranging the house that way centuries ago, but the idea is carrying on even today because it's a good idea. It works in that region. And so that's the second realm. And then when things, when they graduate from the second to the third realm, which is the realm of the region, that's when people around that locality look at something and say that we want to adopt this into our family of regional traditions. And then at some point, some of the patterns may graduate all the way up to the fourth realm, which is the realm of the nation. And actually, interestingly enough, the Charleston side yard the second row image that I showed you. About 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago now, there was a planner of a place, well, most of y'all know him, it's DPC in Seaside, and they introduced the Charleston Side Yard to Seaside, and it began to be built there, and then people around the rest of the region said, hey, this is a good idea too. You know, the wind comes from about the same place here and all that, and so they began to build that way there as well. And then just recently, some people from even out of the Deep South have said, well, you know, our wind patterns are kind of the same. I mean, it's hot in the summer, cold in the winter, and so it makes sense here too. And so that pattern has actually graduated all the way up to the fourth realm now of a nearly national pattern, whereas it started out, you know, just in Charleston. The fifth realm is what I call the continental heritage. Now, what I'm showing here is an example of Western classicism, but that does not that doesn't apply all around the world. I mean, there's places. Obviously, the most highly refined architecture in China doesn't look like that at all. So that's just one example. The sixth realm are the universal patterns that anywhere around the world are the same. Kind of like a laugh or a smile. Wherever you are in the world, you don't need to ask what does that mean. Okay, because it's obvious. These are things like the shape and proportion and arrangement of the human body, things like this that simply are universal. Here's how it works in practice. These are examples from Seaside. This first building here in the upper left was the very first building built there, and over time they evolved until at about this point the architects, and this was about 10 years after this building was built, or maybe even 15. The architects at that point had fully recovered the local, or really the regional traditions. But after that, watch what happens. You know, you start seeing things that were never done previously until the point that now this is next to Seaside in watercolor. At this point in time, you know, those shapes had never been done before, quite like that any time in human history. And you never could have known when this started out what it was going to turn into. Okay, so the idea is if you have a number of architects and designers that are working not in the same firm or in a collaboration per se, but as part of a school of architecture, you know, like the Sarasota School, in mid-century, the last century. If you have them working as part of a school of architecture, then architecture takes on a life of its own, and it actually turns into things that we could never anticipate beforehand. There are a series of places, because I'm talking about something that I would love to see y'all do. There are a series of places that have already done this in the past. A couple of them that did extreme makeovers were Santa Fe and Santa Barbara. Actually, Santa Fe was actually just a straight-up Victorian town until about, I think it was 1908, anyhow, somewhere before 1910, that in that case, it was driven by the local business community. I mean, it was a real estate deal, okay? They said, hey, you know, if we can take on a specific character of our place, then our real estate would be more valuable, and sure enough they did. And so they basically turned it, most of the buildings, so there's a few that are still in their original state. Most of them are now the adobe architecture that is what Santa Fe is known for. Santa Barbara did a similar thing, except in Santa Barbara, from what I understand, what I'm told, that was actually driven by the local architectural community as opposed to the business leaders. So it can be either one, okay? Whether y'all are business leaders or whether you're design leaders, either one, whichever you are, you can be a part of the force that makes that happen here if you so choose. There's also places that have started out kind of from the very beginning developing into a particular character. Where I'm from is South Beach, as I said, and then Tel Aviv is another, that both of them, Art Deco was their primary character. And then Coral Gables did the same thing as well. Now, you might ask, well, if you're talking about urban architecture, you know, why would you not start with the French Quarter as the starting point for this architecture? It's a fair question, okay? Because you say, well, hey, that's the same regional conditions in climate and culture, isn't it? Well, let me suggest to you that it's not exactly the same thing, okay? Your climate is essentially the same. Most of your conditions are the same, except they're on the Mississippi and y'all are not. You know, but other than that, most of the conditions are the same. You both face hurricanes and all this. But the culture, from everything I understand, is not. Okay, I mean, y'all don't consider yourself a suburb of New Orleans. I mean, I figured that out already, you know. So, and here's another thing too. If you emulate basically copy from a world-class great city, like New Orleans is, in particular the French Quarter, the people travel all the way around the world. If you just say, we're going to be exactly like that, then you don't create the value that you could, because of the fact that all those that emulate that are always going to be kind of in second place to New Orleans. It'll be like, well, this is good, but it's not really the real thing, you know. So that's why it's important for you to develop a character that actually is of here. Now let me talk about the T word. And I understand this is kind of a difficult discussion to have with colleagues of mine. I'm an architect as well, not in Louisiana, but my license is in some other states. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding about this word, but really things like the Sarasota School, those were local traditions. Okay, let's just use the word. And let me distinguish it. A habit is something that we do repeatedly, but a tradition is something we do repeatedly because we love to. Okay, so there's that whole aspect of lovability involved there. So what is a living tradition? I kind of mentioned this, the term earlier about being a living thing and not a dead thing. Living tradition begins by a great insight by one person on how to build something better. I don't know if it's how you support a beam, if it's how you close a window or something like that. Whatever it is, somebody has a better idea about a way to do something, okay? They build that, and then if it resonates with other people, it repeats. You know, they repeat it, okay? And then, so it becomes a local pattern like we were talking about earlier, moves to the second realm. And then at some point in time, if something is good enough, then the other cities and towns in the region, they say, we love this thing, we want to adopt this into our family of regional traditions, and so they do, and so that's one way of looking at it. Now, here's another path to exactly the same thing. Take that same insight, which is the beginning starting point. If the person that had that insight has enough passion and commitment to it to transmit it to a hive of like-minded individuals, meaning the other architects in the region in this particular case, but this applies to many things other than architecture, then it becomes a cause. It's kind of the beginning of that school of architecture, if you will. And then if the cause transmits to the culture at large, not just that hive of like-minded people, then it becomes a movement. And then if it crosses generational boundaries to where your kids start doing it too, or your parents for that matter, if you're young enough, then it reaches the highest standard of ideas that spread, which is a living tradition. So that's two different ways of getting to the same point. Now, part of the misunderstanding of the T word is the fact that most living traditions in the U.S. actually died about a century ago. I'll maintain to you that the last living tradition to die was actually Art Deco right on South Beach. I think I'm probably living in one of the last Art Deco buildings built. It was built right before the end of World War II. But there's a very important distinction to make here, because all we've ever talked about when we talk about traditions is dead ones. You know, do you want to build a bungalow again? Well, that's a dead tradition. I can replicate that. You know, but that's not a living tradition. But there is about as much similarity between a dead tradition and a living tradition as there is between a fossil and a living creature. In this case, it's not the same species. The dog is my dog, and the fossil is someone else's fossil. But anyhow, but you get the idea. A lot of people say that you actually can't have living traditions today because, you know, we're post-industrial people. We don't even understand how that works. Let me suggest to you that this is a diagram, a worldwide diagram of the blogosphere. The blogosphere is a very vibrant living tradition that has sprung up just in the last 10 years. And today, millions of people write blogs and hundreds of millions of people read them. Okay, so there's no shadow of a doubt that we can do that. We're just not doing it right now in architecture, but we could. There's three levels of tradition. The basic level that I mentioned before is a very blunt instrument. It's just simply talking about it as style. That really doesn't get you much of anywhere. The second thing is to understand the design principles behind those patterns, that what we do. But the highest level is actually to foster a living vernacular tradition where everybody in the room or in the town or in the region, according to what scope we're talking about, actually knows what it is. So let me illustrate what I believe is the heartbeat of a living tradition. The day after Thanksgiving 1980, my wife, my sister, her boyfriend at the time, and I, we'd had too much turkey. We said, we need to walk. Well, where shall we walk? Well, I grew up in Huntsville, Alabama, which was all sprawl almost. It was built almost entirely after World War II. And so there's no place to walk there, so we drove 20 miles to Mooresville, Alabama, where we could walk. I was in the middle of architecture school at the time, and our professors had told us that we were going to be the greatest generation of architects ever. because we now had computers and our builders had bigger power tools and the banks had more clever mortgages, and of course we know how that worked out. And so, but they were basically saying because our tools are better, we were going to be better. But here was a place built by simple farmers and tradespeople beginning in 1818, 40 years before an architect ever set foot in the state of Alabama, and it was a better place than any, not better buildings, there's better buildings than this, but it was a better place than any place that had been built since the end of World War II. How is that possible, that you can have something that simple farmers and tradespeople can build better than all the experts? I had no idea. I took that mystery home with me. I kind of fed it and watered it and gave it a place to live for 24 years until it finally came to me. We were doing a charrette in Jackson, Mississippi, and after the final dinner was over, and we were visiting with each other before going to bed out in the lobby of the Millsaps Bowie House, someone asked Milton Grenfell, "Milton, why is it in this part of the world that you have these bell-cast eaves?" And he said, where it breaks before it gets to the bottom. And he said, well, we do this because here, we get torrential rains. And so, but then also, we need roof slopes of 8 and 12 and 9 and 12. Those are the strongest roofs in a hurricane. But if you have a roof that's steep and water comes off of it in trench rain, it'll dig a trench in the yard. So we need that to break the force of the water, and it goes off in more of a spray rather than just a whole sheet of water. And it took a minute. I said, wait a minute now. We do this because that's it. That was the key, because if you put every pattern in a language of architecture into those terms, just those 4 words, then it allows everyone to think again. It's like, okay, you have a better idea? By all means, come up with a better idea consistent with the principles of why we do these things. And so that unshackles us all again from the shackles of dead traditions. It's a very, very important thing. So what do we do? Well, for people like similar to my lines of work, if you're one of the civic-minded designers in the audience, then what you need to do, y'all need to get together, seriously. And it's not a consortium. It's nothing where you're actually in business together, but you need to create the Lafayette School of Architecture. And by that I mean, like what we were talking about earlier at the Sarasota School, something like that, where you actually have kind of a set of principles that guide you, okay? Now, I'm going to give you one example that my friend Jeff Dyer did, and he threw something on the table. Now, I think that this is way undercooked right now, and I told him that. But all I'm saying, so this is only a starting point, and it might not even end up like that at all, but all I'm saying is everybody else should throw something on the table too, and let's have a discussion, okay? Because that's the only way that you get the School of Architecture here, the Lafayette School of Architecture, is if y'all all get together and actually there's a discussion about these things. So what should the people do? Okay, if you're not in one of the design disciplines, but if you're just a civic leader, I shouldn't say just, if you're a civic leader, what should you do? Well, 2 things, okay? Demand and hold accountable your built environment to the same standards that you hold your food and you hold your music. If you do that, then you can create an absolutely wonderful built environment. Thank you.
Wow, Steve, that was amazing. It was also recorded on AOC, and I think when I replay it, I'm going to cut it back about a third, because you are a rapid-fire speaker, Steve. I'm sure you've heard that. One takeaway that I wrote right off the bat: our built environment doesn't reflect our culture. I think that's a huge, thought-provoking place to start this discussion, and thanks for leaving us with a lot to think about, Steve. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this possible: Iberia Bank, Van Eaton and Romero, and Paul Michael. Thanks to Chef Pat Mold and Gilbert Descoux for working together on a menu that was intended to deliver the message and reinforce the message that Steve just gave us. And also, once again, a round of applause for Wilson Savoy and Drew Seymour for a special treat today. Awesome, awesome. So don't forget, the UDC code needs our support. Introductory ordinance on Tuesday, final adoption on May 5th. Jason, thank you for bringing in another warrior in this cause for One Acadiana. And thank everybody for coming. Have a great day.